What if I told you that the most dangerous thing in a relationship isn't cheating, isn't lying, but the subtle, seemingly harmless words a woman says that reveal exactly who she is? And what if I told you that ignoring these signs could ruin your life? You see, relationships don't explode in a single moment. They erode slowly, word by word, action by action. And if you don't recognize the 5 deadly phrases that a woman can say, phrases that expose manipulation, disrespect, and emotional chaos, you're walking straight into a trap. So let me ask you, do you really know what to look for? Or are you letting attraction blind you to the truth? Because one wrong relationship can cost you your self-respect, your future, even your sanity. If you want to avoid wasting years of your life, if you want to stay in control, then listen carefully. Because when a woman says these 5 things, you need to walk away. Why is it that so many men today feel powerless in their relationships? Why do they chase, they beg, they tolerate the intolerable, only to find themselves discarded, disrespected, or trapped in a dynamic where they are never enough? I'll tell you why. It's because they don't understand the fundamental truth of attraction, of respect, of what it truly means to be a man worth loving. Let me make this brutally clear. You do not get love by demanding it. You do not earn respect by sacrificing your dignity. And you sure as hell don't attract a strong, committed woman by being weak, indecisive, or afraid of setting boundaries. Yet this is precisely the trap that so many men fall into. They think that by appeasing, by overgiving, by suppressing their own needs in service to another's, they will be rewarded with devotion. That is a lie. Worse, it's a self-imposed form of slavery. Do you know what happens when a man lacks a backbone in a relationship? When he refuses to stand up for himself? When he allows his partner's desires, moods, and whims to dictate his entire life? I'll tell you what happens. He is not loved, he is tolerated, and eventually he is discarded. Because a man who does not respect himself will never be respected. This is a deep psychological reality. Women, whether they consciously articulate it or not, are drawn to strength. And I don't mean brute force. I mean moral strength, psychological stability, unwavering integrity, a man who knows who he is, what he wants, and what he will and will not accept. And yet, so many of you are terrified of this. Terrified to enforce your own boundaries because you think that standing up for yourself means losing her. But let me ask you something. What exactly are you holding on to if the only way to keep her is to abandon yourself? See, the reality is, when a man has no backbone, when he avoids conflict at all costs, when he fears speaking his mind because he doesn't want to upset her, he is not a partner, he is a servant. And women do not fall in love with servants. Now, let me contrast this with the kind of man who commands respect, not through force, not through arrogance, but through an unshakable sense of self. When a man walks with confidence, not because he is faking it, but because he has built himself into something formidable, he does not chase love. He does not beg for approval. He does not alter his principles to gain temporary affection. And do you know what happens? He becomes irresistible. Because he is rare, because he possesses something so many men lack: certainty, direction, and the courage to enforce his own standards. A man like that does not fear loss because he understands this. It is better to be alone with dignity than in a relationship that requires you to sacrifice your self-respect. Let me tell you something. If you do not respect yourself, if you allow mistreatment, if you tolerate the intolerable, you are teaching her precisely how to view you. And the moment she realizes that you value her more than you value your own dignity, the attraction begins to die. Because no one can truly love what they do not respect. Now, some of you will resist this. Some of you will say, but love is about sacrifice. Love is about compromise. And you're right, but only to a point. Love is not about sacrificing your identity, your values, or your dignity. And compromise does not mean abandoning yourself to please someone who refuses to meet you halfway. You want to be loved? Be a man worthy of love. That means building yourself into something strong, something disciplined, something undeniable. It means walking away when you are not valued. It means refusing to apologize for expecting respect. Because let me tell you something. The moment you start accepting less than you deserve is the moment you teach the world that it's all your worth. What if I told you that the words a woman speaks to you can determine the future of your relationship? That, in just a few sentences, you can see clear as day. Whether she respects you, whether she values you, or whether she is testing the limits of your tolerance before she begins to break you down, piece by piece. Would you listen? Would you take it seriously, or would you, like so many men, dismiss the warning signs until it's too late? Let me tell you something. Most men never learn until it's too late. The moment a woman disrespects you with her words, the relationship is on a countdown to collapse. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. Because words are not just sounds. Words are signals. Words reveal character. Words expose intention. See, a woman will tell you exactly who she is, exactly what she thinks of you, and exactly what kind of relationship you're about to have if you listen. The problem is most men don't listen. They hear the words, sure, but they dismiss them. They justify them. They convince themselves it's just a joke, just an off day, just emotions. But here's the truth. When a woman repeatedly speaks to you with disrespect, she is showing you exactly how much she values you. Now you might say, but Jordan, relationships are complicated. People say things they don't mean all the time. And sure, sometimes that's true, but pay attention to patterns, not just moments. If a woman speaks down to you once, you might let it slide. Twice, you take note. 3 times, it's not a mistake. It's a test to see how much she can get away with. A test to see if you are a man who will demand respect or a man who will tolerate being diminished. And let me tell you something. If you tolerate being diminished, it will only get worse. Because the more you allow someone to treat you poorly, the more permission you give them to keep doing it. And don't for a second believe that love will save you from this dynamic. Love is not an excuse for disrespect. Love without respect is nothing more than emotional manipulation. So what do you do? What do you do when a woman starts saying things that cut at your dignity, that challenge your worth, that undermine your confidence? You walk, because if she does not respect you, she cannot love you. You walk because if you stay, you are teaching her that she can wound you without consequence. And when you do that, you don't just lose her respect, you lose your own. You see, a man who respects himself does not argue about whether he deserves respect, he enforces it. He does not try to convince a woman to see his value. He walks away from anyone who refuses to see it. Because a man who values himself knows this: it is better to be alone with integrity than in a relationship that requires you to beg for dignity. And let's be clear, this is not about domination, this is not about control, this is about setting a standard for how you will and will not be treated. Because the moment you allow someone to speak to you with disrespect, whether it's through sarcasm, belittling comments, dismissiveness, you are showing them that they can treat you that way and you will stay. And that is a dangerous precedent. Because once that standard is set, the relationship only moves in one direction, down. So I will say this, and I want you to hear me clearly. When a woman tells you who she is, when she shows you her level of respect for you through her words, believe her. Don't rationalize it. Don't excuse it. Don't think that if you just love her enough, if you just endure it long enough, she will change. Because if you stay with someone who does not respect you, the only thing that will change is you, and you will not like the man you become. What if I told you that a single phrase from a woman's mouth could determine whether your future is filled with strength, growth, and mutual respect, or years of slow grinding emotional erosion? Would you listen? Would you take it seriously? Because I'll tell you something most men never realize until it's too late. When a woman tells you she doesn't respect you, believe her. Now, she won't always say it outright. No, that would be too obvious. Instead, it will come in disguised forms. Sarcasm, dismissiveness, subtle put-downs, passive-aggressive remarks. And the worst part, most men won't even recognize it when it happens. They'll laugh it off, make excuses, tell themselves she's just in a bad mood, or maybe I'm overreacting. But you're not overreacting, you're being tested. And here's the hard truth. If a woman does not respect you, she cannot love you. You need to understand this deep in your bones. Because if you miss this point, you will waste years of your life trying to earn the love of someone who has no intention of giving it. Respect is the foundation of attraction. It is not just a preference, it is a psychological necessity. Women are wired to seek out men they admire, men they can trust to lead, men they can count on to stand firm in their value. And what happens when you show that you're willing to tolerate disrespect? She loses trust in you. Because deep down she knows that a man who cannot even stand up for himself cannot possibly stand up for her. So let's break this down. What does it sound like when a woman disrespects you? It could be something as subtle as, you never do anything right, or as blatant as, I don't even know why I'm with you. It could be the way she speaks about you in front of others, mocking, belittling, treating you as though you're incompetent. And don't mistake this for playful teasing. No. There's a difference between humor and contempt, and you can feel it in your gut when the line is crossed. And when that line is crossed, what do? That's where most men fail. Most men plead, they explain, they try to negotiate respect. But respect is not negotiated, it is commanded. The moment you try to reason with someone about why they should value you, you've already lost. Because here's what you need to realize. Disrespect doesn't start at full volume. It starts small. A dismissive comment here, a sarcastic jab there, and every time you let it slide, you teach her something. You teach her that she can get away with it. And slowly but surely, it escalates. Before you know it, you are in a relationship where you are constantly defending yourself, constantly questioning your worth, constantly being diminished. And the worst part, you allowed it to happen. But here's where you can change the script. You don't tolerate it. You don't argue. You don't fight for respect like a beggar grasping for scraps. You make it clear through action that you will not entertain someone who does not value you. And if she continues, you walk. And let me tell you something. When you walk away from a woman who disrespects you, you command more respect in that single act than in 1,000 arguments. Because at that moment, you prove that your value is not up for debate. You prove that you are a man of standards. You prove that you are not so desperate for companionship that you will tolerate being treated like an afterthought. And here's the paradox. When you hold yourself to this standard, you don't lose women. You attract better ones. Women who admire you, women who appreciate you, women who are drawn to the rare strength of a man who actually respects himself. So hear me when I say this. The next time a woman tells you through words or actions that she does not respect you, don't argue, don't explain, don't justify. Walk. Because a man who respects himself never stays where he is not valued. What if I told you that one of the most dangerous phrases a woman can say to you sounds innocent on the surface, but is actually a time bomb waiting to explode? A phrase that, if ignored, will slowly dismantle your confidence, drain your energy, and erode your very sense of self. If you loved me, you would. Now let that sink in for a moment, because I guarantee you every man in this room has heard some version of this, maybe not in those exact words, but with the same poisonous implication. It's a test, a trap, a psychological manipulation disguised as love, and if you fail to recognize it, you're walking straight into a relationship dynamic that will cripple you. Because here's the brutal reality. Love is not a bargaining chip. Love is not something that can be leveraged, twisted, or weaponized to control another person. And yet, how many men fall into this trap thinking, well, maybe she's right, maybe if I just do this one thing, it'll prove my love for her. But it never stops at one thing, does it? No, it starts small. If you loved me, you wouldn't go out with your friends so much. Okay, fair enough. Maybe you compromise. Then it's, if you loved me, you'd cut off that female coworker. It makes me uncomfortable. Then it's, if you loved me, you'd stop working so late. You care more about your job than me. And suddenly, without even realizing it, you're shrinking. You're folding in on yourself. You're erasing everything that made you an attractive, independent, self-respecting man in the first place. And do you know what happens when you give in to this? When you start proving your love through submission, through sacrifice, through bending to her every emotional whim, she loses attraction for you. Because let's be clear, love is not supposed to be a test of obedience. Anytime a woman, anyone really, demands that you prove your love by surrendering a piece of yourself, you are not in a relationship. You are in a psychological war zone, and you are losing. Now, some of you might be thinking, but Peterson, aren't relationships about compromise? Of course they are. But compromise is a mutual act. It's a discussion. It's two people working together to make things better for both of them. It is not one person using love as a weapon to mold the other into submission. And let's talk about the deeper psychological mechanism behind this. Because this is not just about relationships. This is about power. The second you allow someone to dictate your behavior under the guise of love. You've given them control over you. And control kills attraction. Men are not designed to thrive under submission. You think the great men of history, men who built empires, who shaped civilizations, who stood against the forces of tyranny, were worrying about whether their wife approved of them seeing their friends on a Friday night? No, they were too busy being men of purpose. And that's the core of this, isn't it? The moment you start proving your love through submission, you abandon your purpose. And when a man loses his purpose, he loses everything. His edge, his ambition, his very sense of self. And the irony? That's when the woman who demanded that submission stops respecting him. So what do? The answer is simple, but not easy. You refuse to play the game. You make it clear through action, not words, that your love is not a currency to be spent on appeasement. You establish boundaries. You stand firm in who you are. And if she continues to test, to push, to demand that you sacrifice yourself to prove your worth, you walk. Because let me tell you something. The moment you teach someone that your love is conditional on your submission, you will spend the rest of your life proving yourself to someone who will never be satisfied. And that is not love. That is slavery. What if I told you that the most dangerous words a woman can say to you are the ones that seem the most innocent? What if I told you that a single phrase, just a few seemingly casual words, could be the warning sign of a relationship that will break you? I just want to have fun. Now that sounds harmless, doesn't it? Who doesn't want to have fun? But let's look deeper, because beneath that lighthearted statement, there's often something far darker lurking. When a woman tells you, I just want to have fun, what she's really saying is, I'm not looking for commitment, responsibility, or consequences. I want pleasure without duty, freedom without accountability. And if you're a man who's serious about his life, about his purpose, about building something real, then that should set off alarm bells in your head. Because here's the harsh reality. A relationship built on nothing but fun will shatter the moment real life intrudes. Fun doesn't hold people together when things get difficult. Fun doesn't build a foundation strong enough to withstand hardship. Fun is fleeting. And a person who prioritizes fun over meaning, over loyalty, over growth is a person who will disappear when things get hard. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying relationships should be miserable, that joy has no place in love. Of course, you want to be with someone you enjoy being around, but enjoyment alone is not enough. And if a woman is telling you right from the outset that she's only in this for fun, what she's really telling you is that when the fun stops, so does the relationship. And let's be brutally honest about what that means. If she's only in it for fun, what happens when you have a hard day at work? What happens when your business fails, when your father dies, when you're struggling with self-doubt or uncertainty? What happens when you're not at your best, when you need loyalty instead of entertainment? She leaves. Because a person who only values fun does not value you. They value what you provide in the moment. They value the excitement, the novelty, the highs. But the second those highs fade, they're looking for the next thrill. And if you tie your self-worth to someone like that, if you invest in someone who only stays when it's easy, you will find yourself utterly alone the moment life demands something real from them. And let's go even deeper than that. What does it say about you if you accept this kind of relationship? If you let yourself be used as a source of entertainment rather than as a man with a mission? Because the truth is, a woman who only wants fun is a woman who has no vision for the future. And a man who entertains that, who accepts it, who plays along, is a man who is selling himself short. Ask yourself, are you a man who is looking for something real, or are you willing to be a temporary amusement? Because if you're serious about your life, if you're on the path of discipline, of purpose, of mastery, then you cannot afford to waste your time on people who do not respect that. And let me be absolutely clear. A woman who says she only wants fun does not respect you. She might like you, she might be attracted to you, but she does not see you as something worthy of investing in. And that is unacceptable. So what do? The answer is simple. You walk away. You do not negotiate. You do not try to convince her to take you seriously. You do not diminish yourself in the hopes that she will one day change her mind. You walk. Because a man who respects himself does not beg for commitment. A man who respects himself does not waste his time on people who are not serious about him. A man who respects himself demands more, not with words, not with ultimatums, but with his actions. And when you walk away from the women who only want fun, you send a message, not just to them, but to yourself. You say, I am a man of purpose. I am a man of vision, and I will not be reduced to a source of amusement for someone who cannot see my worth. And that changes everything.